Hello and welcome to Diminishing Returns and our first review of the year episode of 2018. Yes, our traditional bi-annual episodes where we look back at the films we were anticipating throughout the year, in this case, January through May 2018. Films such as Maze Runner, The Death Cure, Annihilation, Black Panther, Tomb Raider, Pacific Rim Uprising, Deep Blue Sea 2, and Avengers Infinity War. This podcast contains spoilers for all of those films, but especially Black Panther and Infinity War. If you like what you hear, then we'd love it if you could check out our website at dimreturns.com, and if you care to do so, please give us a positive rating and or review on iTunes. But without further ado, join us as we travel back to a confused, primitive, and arduous time. January 2018.
Hello, welcome to Diminishing Returns, is this our fourth or fifth review of the year episode ever, where we look back at the films we've been talking about. So, we've done this before, you know the drill, it's always good fun, we're having a discussion of films that have been out recently. So earlier this year, the start of this year...
I'm Calvin, by the way.
Yes, and I'm Alan. That's what over there is Sol.
How do you do?
Go on.
At the start of this year, what did we do? I'll tell you what the first one was. It's a really shit film to start with.
Right.
The Maze Runner. Whatever the third one was called. That came out. We did the Maze Runner, looking at the third one coming out. Have you guys seen it?
I wanted to see it, but because we're recording this a bit earlier than its home movie release, I have not seen it yet. And I'd be damned if I'm paying £15 to see it at the cinema. So.
No. Well, I didn't particularly want to see it, but I downloaded it illegally and watched it for free. Because that's the kind of guy I am. I like to live on the edge.
Is it a satisfying finale to the films we discussed?
What do you think?
Probably not.
No,
Am I accurate?
You're very accurate. It was extremely shit. Have you seen it, Sol?
No, I have not. I hated the other two so much that I...
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I wasn't like desperate to watch anything. I just thought I tried to get through as many of these films as I could, and this was like the last one I got to. I won't go into a lot of detail then. Basically, it's one of the major problems with it is that it's not a sequel. It's not like a new story within this story world. It's a direct continuation of the last film, so it just feels like you're watching the second half of a series, or second half of a thing. So it doesn't really work as a sort of standalone film. Obviously, the second film, I quite liked the first one for what it was, and we discussed this in the episode. The second one was terrible, and this one's also terrible for the same sort of reasons, and it just completely loses any sense of reality, or I'm not sure if it feels like, what I assume happened, what it feels like is someone wrote one book, and then it was successful, so they had to come up with some way of continuing it, which was not established in the first book at all, and so they've just gone in a completely different direction. It doesn't really tie into what happens in the first film. They try and make it tie in, and the more they explain, the less it makes sense. Yeah, and then just a lot of just little complaints of like, well, why has that character done that? That was a stupid thing to do. They wouldn't do that in that situation. Basically, my notes are things like, none of this makes sense. The whole plot of this film is stupid. And things like that. So I won't go into details. It's not really worth it.
Sounds like the second film all over again, basically.
I'll tell you a little bit of a interesting is relative, but this is a spoiler. I'm sure you won't mind. But Thomas, who is the lead character, and he has special blood that for some reason cures people. Right. So when he gives blood to someone in the second film, and they're like, oh, that'll see you right for a couple of months, and then ultimately she's not sick anymore. And so they realise, and part of the plot of this film is that they realise that he's the cure. Finally, after all this pain and turmoil, he's the cure, and they've found him, and they just need to, get blood out of him. And the end of the film is him basically going, nah.
No.
No, I've decided not to let you do that. So the end of it is, humanity is doomed unless you're immune.
Does he justify his decision?
Well, the whole storyline and this whole film is predicated on the fact that sacrificing these 30 young people who are immune in order to extract a cure that will save many is not justified, which is one of the main problems with it, because it obviously is. And okay, if you're one of those people and you manage to escape, you don't want to go back. I can understand it, but they just don't explore that ambiguity enough. And you've got the Teresa, the girl character, that she's the other side of that, where she understands that it's a difficult thing to do, but she thinks it's worth it. And there's this sort of ambiguity. And then you've got the main bad guy, who's the Aidan Gillen, is it? Is that who?
Yeah.
Is that his name? He's in this. He's still shit. So he's like the proper bad guy, because he's the one who's going, yes, we get this guy, we'll get the cure, and then we can sell it to all our rich friends, but not give it to the nasty poor people. We'll let them die, ha 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 ha. And so that's okay. Okay, he's the bad guy because it's like the corporate guy. But ultimately, the other people on the other side they're trying to find a cure to save humanity, and so it's difficult to see them as the bad guys. Anyway, it's very much a continuation of the second film in that it's terrible and doesn't make any sense.
I just have one question. The film was postponed during filming because the lead actor, he was involved in some kind of accident and he, smashed his face up or something.
So
is there a part of the
Mark
film?
Hamill face?
Well, is there a part in the film where he goes from being like, "You can't take my blood," to "You can't take my blood"?
I didn't notice anything there.
Interesting.
There was no obvious lacerations on his face. But you know the guy you like, Sol, Gally.
The ugly one.
Yeah, he's in it, and now obviously he dies at the end of the first film. So when he turns up in this one, it's like a bit of a reveal, and they're like, "Go what? Well, you were dead," and he's like, but was I? No, I wasn't." And that's it. It's like, no, I wasn't actually dead. Someone found me and they sort of cured me, and now I've been living here for a bit, and now I'm going to help you. So it was just, I don't know why that had to happen. Just make a new character. Well, anyway. So there you go. Pretty crap.
Okay.
I gave it a 3 out of 10.
Ooh.
It was quite boring. And I watched half of it, and then I had to stop for some reason. And about 2 days later, it occurred to me that I hadn't finished it because I'd forgotten. and then I actually did it again, because I watched about 20 minutes of it, gave up again, and then again thought I'd finished it. So that's the sort of emotional connection I had to it.
Okay, interesting. So what did we cover next?
Well, this is a weird one. We did Sunshine. You made us do. Yes. Loosely tying into the release of what's his name, Alex
Garland.
Yeah, Alex Garland's at the time upcoming film Annihilation, which, as it turns out, was going straight to Netflix. I had no idea that was the case. It just popped up one day, so I watched it, and have you guys watched it?
Yes,
I watched it, and I actually thought. Actually, it's a really good one that we tied Sunshine into, because in a very similar way, there's some very interesting concepts here that aren't quite wrapped up in a plot that makes any sense. And it sort of ultimately lacks a coherent plot, but some really interesting things. Very much like Sunshine, actually.
Yeah, it's very true.
I was reminded of Sunshine quite a lot, just even in the very concept of it's these people and they're going to try and get to this certain point, otherwise humanity will die, and they don't quite know how they're going to accomplish their goal, but they're going along with it anyway.
For listeners who haven't got any idea what Annihilation is or haven't seen it, what is it? We see a meteor striking Earth, and basically this government sort of laboratories built to try and figure out what this strange emanating energy is that's kind of slowly expanding out from the crash site ever so slowly. Anyone who goes into the weird energy doesn't seem to come back, or not quite right if they do.
Until Natalie Portman's husband returns from a mission, but then prompt it isn't quite himself. It's sort of Invasion of the Body Snatchers-esque, and he, is taken away, and she is taken away too, and is briefed on all this, and then ends up going in with an all-female team to figure out what's going on and get to the lighthouse where the meteor first hit.
Yeah, it's become apparent to them that it's going to keep expanding to the point that it starts, like, consuming the planet, which is why they need to go in and figure out what's going on, because it's not contained. But yeah, so, and then when they get in there, it's just weird, isn't it? I mean, what is it? You see, like, weird plants growing all strange and rainbow colours.
Yeah, there's lots of crocodiles and stuff. And ultimately, the point of it is that DNA is kind of getting mashed up and creating new things, because whatever this thing is, which is essentially an alien life force, is kind of just investigating and kind of going, oh, well, this is DNA, let's see what this does. And so, like, there's like animals with plants growing out of them and plants with animals growing out of them. But it's done quite subtly. Like, it's not done with like, oh, look, a giant eating plant trying to kill us. It's like it's quite a philosophical film rather than an action film, which I think is to its credit. It's what I liked about it. Yeah.
I found it a really unnerving film as well, I've got to say. Like, in terms of, I mean, it's not, I certainly wouldn't say it's intended as a horror film, but I would say some of the, particularly towards the end, when she kind of comes face to face with this being from another world, I found it really unnerving. That just everything about how it's shot, acted, I thought it was really well crafted sequence, that whole thing, and the way it plays out. I won't go into it in too much detail because it'll be spoilers, I guess, but yeah, I really quite enjoyed it overall. It was very Alex Garland-y, like you say. It wasn't massively clean cut, it was quite a messy film that didn't quite could have been neatened up a bit, but I still really quite enjoyed. And
yeah, the plot just it just feels like he's had a good idea that he hasn't been able to put a plot to, and so that just let it down from a story point of view. But yeah, loads of things in it that I liked. A lot of the visual stuff I liked, a lot of production design. There's a few elements where you can see it's low budget, but I'm kind of I'm willing to let that go. And there's a lot of elements where they've obviously can't shoot things. That's why there's no big action scenes, because they can't afford to do this big CGI monster character or like sort of mutant bear thing. And then when they do, it doesn't look that good. But basically, I kind of like some of the concept. I thought there was a directorial flair there. There was definitely a style which I liked. There were some very nice things with, like just a shot through a glass of water, showing, a hand, but it's refracted and obscured, which kind of really, on a narrative sense, a thematic sense, plays in, because the whole thing about this shimmer is that it's refracting things against themselves and all. It makes sense within the context, and it's just a nice visual way of. Visual metaphor of what's going on. So yeah, loads of things that I liked. It's the sort of thing where I was like, oh yeah, I want to see what this person does next.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah. Interestingly, do you know like how this ended up on Netflix? There was the producer, I believe the producer's Scott Rudin, and he had final cut on the finished thing. But there was some chief, I think it was Paramount, where the film was like. Where it had its base, where it was, filmed, and whoever was in charge was like, this is too intellectual and too strange. Can we change the ending and do this, and this in the middle bits? And they said no. They're like, no, we're standing by it. So that's how it ended up being distributed through Netflix, because I guess they weren't as discerning about it. But good for them by standing to the ground. Like you could easily see how. It had the ending did have the feel of something that you can imagine would have ended up in another dimension on the DVD extras, and it was as an interesting added feature, and that the original ending would be changed. It reminded me actually in bits of... did you ever see The Invasion, which was like another remake of The Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig, and that film was famously taken away from the director and scenes were added, the ending was changed, and it was a real mess. And you could see some of that in here. I can see why a studio executive would look at it and be like, God, we're not going to make any money with this.
Yes. I can see that as well. But yeah, a couple of the actors were a bit weak, but like not terrible.
Yeah,
but definitely. I think that could have been improved because there's sort of there's 5 principal actors in it. You got Natalie Portman. What's her face? Who's the other woman? What's her name?
Natalie Portman was the only name that I knew. Oscar Isaac's in there as her husband.
Tessa Thompson's in there, and I thought she was quite good.
Jennifer Jason Leigh, is that it? Is that her name?
Is she related to Jason Lee of skateboarding and Kevin Smith Chipmunk fame?
No. But yeah, so her and Natalie Portman are the kind of names, and then the other 3 women who go with them into this scary place. I mean, they were unknown to me. They were kind of, and you know, one of them was all right.
You know Tessa Thompson.
Which one's that?
So the good
one.
Well,
no, I don't, obviously. But
she was in Thor Ragnarok. She played Valkyrie in it.
Oh yeah, no, I thought she was quite poor actually.
No, I thought she was good.
In this, she just seemed out of place somehow. I don't know. Not that they were bad actors particularly. It might have been the direction. I thought the dialogue was a bit dodgy, and perhaps it's just the directors not getting much out of them. Like the way that Jennifer Jason Leigh was playing her character, I didn't like that. I don't think that helped. Like, she's supposed to be quite cold, but I don't know, it didn't come across well.
It sounds like we're all pretty much on the same page when it comes to this. It wouldn't surprise me if we all have the same rating. It'd be a 7 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, same here.
I give it a 6. But...
Okay. Ooh, harsh. So, the week after Sunshine, we did our now annual tradition of 50 Shades of Grey episode. For the third 50 Shades of Grey film. Have any of us bothered to watch that?
I will do for next Valentine's Day.
Oh yeah, I'll do it for the next big 50 Shades episode. It's going to be a good one.
I might not even bother for that. Feels like there's not much point really. I think we've treated it with the respect it deserves.
And then we did Captain America, the trilogy of Captain America films, because Black Panther was coming out, a sort of spin-off of Civil War, arguably. So yeah, Black Panther.
Now, we've all seen this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I watched it. I didn't see it at the cinema. I just watched it recently.
I'm sure you're going to be the least into it of the 3.
Well, do you want me to go first then?
Because Calvin's on board with this one because it's got like James Bond elements in it.
Oh.
Well, let me give you my broad strokes then. Ultimately, and I was kind of looking forward to watching this one because I thought it might be a bit different. And ultimately, I felt like it was just kind of the same as the other Avengers films I've seen. Slightly different flavour to it, just a little bit different kind of, feel to it, but not enough. I found the main guy, the Black Panther man, to be quite bland and boring character. And Michael B. Jordan, who was the main villain, kind of doesn't get enough of a setup because the whole idea is that it's a reveal that who he is. But then you don't really get invested in this villain. And then, again, he was... I like Michael B. Jordan, but it just felt like he was quite a one-dimensional character who was just like, I'm the young, aggressive guy.
I thought he was a very good villain, personally. I really liked him. And I really like the way they set up Andy Serkis as this massive, flamboyant, hamming it up, chewing the scenery villain that was great fun, but then just kind of unceremoniously killed him off halfway through the film to be like, no, this is the real villain over here.
I was never under any illusion that anyone other than Michael B. Jordan was the main villain.
I didn't know that. I did not know that at all. I kind of went into this fairly blind. So the fact that Michael B. Jordan was in it, I was like, "Oh, that's Michael B. Jordan." I didn't know if he was going to turn out to be a villain or if he was going to be end up being a sidekick or it could have been anything. And it was setting him up as the bad guy at the beginning. But it wouldn't have been out of realms to be a twist or whatever.
No, they would never have. I can't imagine a world where a Marvel film would make someone good that so blatantly kills innocent people like he does in the museum bit at the start. I'm trying to think if Winter Soldier ever did that, because he's the only other character I can think of that...
What about Loki? They keep making him... Everyone likes him.
That's true, yeah.
But he's always been an anti-hero, Loki.
But what I mean is that Michael B. Jordan might have ended up being the guy who comes good and sacrifices himself at the end, or whatever. You know what I mean? I had no concept.
Yeah.
Well, he almost was, to be honest. He the film certainly wants you to listen to what he has to say. Black Panther certainly takes a lot of what he says on board.
Yeah. What I thought, because during the film, Michael B. Jordan's character kind of takes over Wakanda and becomes a Black Panther. And I just thought this would be the best fake out ever if this guy was actually the guy they'd cast as Black Panther. But they just they really, really pulled a big fake out by getting this other guy to be in 2 films and then setting him up. That would have been great. I wish I had the courage to do that.
Overall, I've got a lot to say about it, but I'll keep it relatively broad. I thought that this had some of the best action in a Marvel film that I've seen in terms of choreography and just how it was all put together. I really loved the majority of the action sequences in this film. I thought the direction generally was great. I thought the actors and performances throughout were really great. A lot of the supporting cast were particularly... well fleshed out and sort of interesting characters. Pretty much everyone working under Black Panther at Wakanda were 10 times better than the likes of friggin' Pepper Potts and Happy Hogan. They were really interesting characters. Even the leader of that other tribe, but I just thought it was full of these great characters, great performances. To me, I thought it did feel distinctly quite different to the Marvel films before it, personally. I thought that flavour of, something else was enough of a distinction for me, so that it didn't just feel like more of the same.
I mean, I'm not... Maybe they do the same because it's the same genre, it's the same thing they're doing. I'm just sick of it and never that big a fan of it in the first place. So maybe it wasn't that this, I was expecting something different. It was just this is what it is. So
I think I can come down the middle somewhat on that. I always have to keep checking my own opinions of this film. I remember I've only seen it the once, but I sat through it and I was like, okay, well, that's fine. It is what it is. It's good entertainment, whatever. But then in the weeks afterwards, I had people asking me, "Oh, what did you think of it?" And I was like, "Oh, it's great, it's really good." And there was wait a minute, I didn't feel that way at all. I thought it was just okay. Why do I feel that? And I think I'm just getting a bit wrapped up in all the positive word of mouth about it. Most people that I know that have seen it have really loved it. I thought it was pretty similar to Alan, actually. There was a James Bondian 20 minutes or so where they go to a casino and Black Panther has a sister who's sort of like Q and he gets a load of gadgets and stuff. But the rest of it was kind of usual Marvel stuff. The things that I really liked actually were the supporting cast. I loved Martin Freeman, Angela Bassett as Black Panther's mum, Letitia Wright as his sister, and I can't remember the actress' name. She plays Michonne in The Walking Dead. But yeah,
whoever is his right hand man, the kind of leader of the warrior women, she's probably my favourite one. I
Michonne.
Really love her. Is that Michelle? Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. I can't remember the actress's name. But Letitia Wright, Angela Bassett is his family. They're fantastic. Maybe this is a bit too spoilery. I don't think it is. I think anyone who is interested will have already seen the film by now. But it bothers me that we have to go through the pretense of believing that Black Panther is overthrown and killed. And he's chucked off a waterfall. And it's I think we're going to get to this in a much... larger capacity with the Avengers Infinity War a bit later on, but I hate that we have to go through this, because anyone, like, how many, Marvel films have... I get that they feel like they have to hit the lowest point, and the lowest point is thinking that the hero is dead, but I wasn't that big a fan of Black Panther, and if the rest of the franchise had been his mum, his sister, and his bodyguard, I would have been happy.
The one thing I'll say there is, like, I genuinely was thinking, like, oh, maybe this film is going to be about him losing the throne, but then, going on to, affect the world positively in other ways and kind of become a hero and do other things. And I thought they were perhaps going to do something quite interesting with all of that, and perhaps make some sort of comment about the very nature of having a monarchy and all that sort of thing ruling over people. But then, no, he just comes back and beats the guy. And
yeah.
But, I mean...
I think the idea that having him dead, or that is not... I don't think they believe that any audience is going to be taken in with that. But it's that the characters believe he's dead, so that they will then fight or whatever. Which is another thing I found interesting, because this guy comes in and beats him in a legitimate fight for the throne, and by their rules. And then the message of this film is, if you don't like the leader who's there by just means, you can take any action you like to overthrow him, including violence and a military coup. So that is the message that this film sends out. So I found quite interesting.
Yeah. You know what? I for me, like, my broad experience with this film was for the first sort of 20 minutes, I just really couldn't quite connect with it. And I don't know if it was the kind of thick, like, made-up African accents everyone was doing that just made it seem very, like...
Andy Serkis's accent was excellent.
He's not in the first 20 minutes, though, is he? I'm talking... There's this sort of... I don't know, it just opened in such a way that just felt very, like, alien and odd, and nothing like, because it is this completely, like, sci-fi world that they've kind of created in Wakanda, and it just felt very weird, and I'm not quite sure what happened, but there was a point when it kind of clicked into gear, and I sort of began to connect with the characters, and I was completely on board with it, but... I was quite unsure for the first 20 minutes, and there were, like, a load of walkouts in the cinema when I was watching.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was really, like,
That's
weird.
Interesting.
But it was a packed cinema. But, like, yeah, I found it really odd. People just walking out of... Yeah. But I genuinely really enjoyed it. I think Marvel are, like, have really come into their own with Phase 3, personally. I think they've done very well.
And it's a shame we'll never see... that character again. Anyway, so what's your rating?
7 from me.
I give it an 8.
I give it a 6.
Right, then we did Tomb Raider. There was a new Tomb Raider film that kind of came and went, and everyone's already forgotten about. Did you watch it, Alan? I know that myself and Calvin probably didn't. Actually, Calvin, did you watch it?
No. Again, I'll see it when it comes out on streaming, but until then, no.
I watched it the other day. I think it may be a deliberate testament to the earlier Tomb Raider films, because it's equally shit. The dialogue is awful in the same way those earlier ones were. Dominic West is just utter shit the entire way through. The dialogue's awful. The way it's delivered is terrible. The main girl actually was all right, I must admit. She's a decent actor, and she did what she could with what she had. Really, it feels like it was directed by someone who doesn't speak English, in the sense that you can't get a very good sense of tone and emphasis from your actors if you don't understand it. Now, the director is Swedish or Norwegian or something like that, so I have no idea how good his English is, but it feels like it's directed by someone who's never met a human and doesn't understand how they act. So yeah, that means that all the character stuff is off. All the dialogue is terrible, and there's all these bits where there's supposed to be a bit of banter between her and some couple of guys, and it's all just so badly written. And yeah, not a lot of establishment of the character of Lara Croft or what she is or why she is. Most of her backstory is basically her dad. He left when she was a kid and he's been missing for ages. So you don't know who she is or where she's from, really. And they just don't make any effort with it. And then they do kind of have a courage at the end to kill off her dad. Spoiler alert. Because...
Well, actually, yeah, fair enough. I always thought he was going to be dead from the start anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the scene itself where they have the emotional moment before he dies is awful, just because it's Dominic West. I mean, it could have been a nice scene, but he just can't act, so it wasn't. And there was some sort of twist at the end. There was some sort of last-minute thing, like a little coda at the end, as if it was like, ooh.
Oh, no, is there a post-credits scene?
No, well, I don't know, but I don't know. No, it wasn't that. It was just something at the end. I can't remember, but all I've put in my notes is some sort of twist at the end. Don't know, don't care.
Maybe it was something from the games that they mentioned, or...
Probably, yeah.
But based on your review, I am more interested to go and see the film now, just for the sake of balance.
But it's a good example, right? There's a scene with Nick Frost.
What?
And there's Nick Frost is in it.
Oh.
And he plays like a pawn shop guy, not a porn star.
He plays in the orangutan.
No,
in the jungle.
He plays a guy working in a pawn shop. She goes there to sell something, so she needs some money, and so he's there to have a bit of witty banter. And it just falls so flat, and it's like him and this woman playing his wife, and they have it, and it's like it's just Nick Frost doing the same thing that Nick Frost does in everything. I know he can do it, but it's just so badly written and
leather.
Yeah, exactly that. But it's just so badly written and directed and that's a beautiful example because Nick Frost just doing Nick Frost, we know he can do it. So it's like, just really badly directed.
I want to see the film now.
That's like
Nick Frost
a 3-minute scene. You can probably look it up. Yeah, I give it 3 out of 10.
Ooh. Well, next up, I don't suppose either of you guys watched Pacific Rim Uprising.
Nah.
I did.
Did you? Oh, we're going to clash now, aren't we?
Like a kaiju and a big metal thing. Okay, great. I've got my popcorn, guys. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for fireworks. So,
essentially, to recap our Pacific Rim episode, I thought Pacific Rim was sort of solid, silly fun. You thought it was inane bullshit. Is that fair?
Yes, probably quite fair. I just felt it was boring. Yeah.
Well, I felt that this sequel, Uprising, and I should acknowledge this film got pretty poor reviews. So I am very much going against the grain. But I thought this film was kind of everything that I'd really hoped the first one would be. It was just... It dialed everything up to 11. It was more like ridiculous, more crazy, more inventive. It did a really good job of continuing the sort of storyline to say that they kind of wrapped things up and prevented that last time round. But continuing certain characters while not bothering to bring others along. I just thought it was great. I thought the action was great fun. We had a bit of a problem with the action, how it was put together in the first film. I thought the action was sort of crafted a lot better in this one. It was much more just conventionally entertaining kind of action sequences. But then the film just gets absolutely mental. Basically, there's a point kind of in the middle where... basically, there's a scene early on that is played almost like a throwaway joke, and you think, okay, weird. And then that soon becomes a very pivotal plot element, and the whole film just goes nuts, and I really liked it. Alan, I bet you hated it?
Why would I hate that? It sounds great. Actually, I thought it was quite good.
Really?
And I thought it was far, far superior to the first film. And
choking my popcorn.
But no, I mean, what you just said there, kind of, I agree with. It just felt a lot more like a solid piece.
And I forgot to mention John Boyega in the lead. Really fantastic, likable.
I mean, what I'm about to say is basically, I think what sold this film to me was John Boyega, and kind of going into it. I can't say I'm like a massive John Boyega fan. It's like I've seen the Star Wars thing. He's all right in that. But just such a natural and easy charisma, such style. He's obviously ad-libbing stuff all over the place, but it doesn't feel... It feels like Iron Man, Tony Stark and Iron Man, like that kind of... an actor bringing very real charisma to a character, but not like desperately trying to bring charisma to it. And definitely... that's who sells this film, and that's what makes this much more watchable. And when you put him next to his kind of foil throughout, he's not a bad guy, but his foil throughout, the guy who's like this all-American kind of square-chinned white guy, who's
is that Clint Eastwood's son?
He's a real Chris, whoever it is. I reckon he's called Chris. He's one of them. I think
it might be Scott Eastwood.
Sure, it's not Chris Eastwood.
It's like the main guy in it after John Boyega.
I think you're right. I think it is Scott.
Yeah, he
Eastwood.
has got an Eastwoody look to him. So him, and he's very kind of... That's the sort of person that usually gets cast as a hero in this film. And here he is like a good guy, but he's like the officious, I'm the military dude, go by the book guy. And so you play that off with John Boyega, who's like from the streets kind of, I get things done kind of guy. In a very kind of classic 80s buddy cop kind of feel to it, and they have to work together to get the job done, and it works. But there's so much of it that John Boyega is obviously ad-libbing, and it works.
I think John Boyega had a huge... I get the impression, like, from interviews with him and stuff, that he was actually really quite pivotal behind the scenes in this film, far more than an actor of his standing would typically be. Like the way he was talking about it, it almost sounded like he was a producer on it or something. It was very weird. I don't know to what extent he was involved beyond acting in it, but it was interesting hearing him talk about it. So yeah, he certainly seemed to be invested in the project. Put it that way.
It feels like it was written, and then he came in, and they realised what they had, and they kind of went, let's make everything with him in it a bit bigger. And everything else can kind of go to the outline a bit, outer edges a bit. Because there's the kind of... It starts with this young girl who's supposed to be about 13, 14, something like that. She's kind of a scrappy, living on the streets kind of building things. So she's like a child protege thing. And they end up going into this military thing together. And anyway, so she's kind of set up as a major character. And she is in it all the way through, but it feels like she suddenly takes a back seat to John Boyega, and kind of her character is about giving John Boyega like a sense of personal responsibility, like because he's like a big brother figure to her. And so it just feels like everything in the film is about him, which I think is good, but it doesn't feel like that's what they were setting out to do. I actually genuinely quite enjoyed it.
I'm flabbergasted. I've just looked it up. John Boyega is a credited producer on the film.
Fair enough, yeah.
So there we go.
They made
flabbergasted
an effort.
You enjoyed it.
They seem to make an effort to like make the fight scenes a bit more interesting. Like one of them's in a big city and they're smashing everything up, and then there's one on a bit like an ice field and they're falling into water. It was just like give it a bit of variation.
That's it. Each one felt like, what's the gimmick of this fight going to be? We have to come up with something other than it's just two robots fighting like I say, I don't want to give away too much of like, because I think a lot of people listening probably haven't watched this one, and maybe we'll have convinced them to go and give it a try. I don't know, but
there is a twist.
There's a few big twists actually, but there's one particularly big twist,
which I genuinely didn't see coming, and like when that happened, I was like, oh, okay, that's all right, and it makes sense.
But
it's also out of the ordinary.
Yes,
it's out of the ordinary because you're just not seeing it coming.
It's quite a bold move on their part. It shows a willingness to not be completely attached to like characters and the status quo. yeah, I really was quite impressed with it, and there were a few twists that I genuinely didn't see coming, but yeah, I think the one that we're no doubt both referring to was particularly yeah.
I'm pretty sure John Boyega did a Bad Boys 2 reference at one point as well, which it does strike me as someone who watches Bad Boys 2 a lot. So
yeah.
That's good.
But yeah, like overall, I hope they make a third one. I hope it made enough money with all that Chinese box office. I think it's actually performed better than the first one money wise, so maybe we'll get a third one. They certainly kind of set one up at the very end. So yeah, hopefully we'll do a proper episode on this down the line. But if not, I give it an 8 out of 10.
I give it a solid 7.
Oh, I'm so surprised.
I was very pleasantly surprised by it as well.
Anyway, shortly after Pacific Rim, we did God's Not Dead for some reason. Religious propaganda pieces. God's Not Dead 3 was coming out. Have you watched it, Alan? I know Calvin and I certainly haven't.
No.
Yeah. All right, so none of us could bear it, bring ourselves to endure it.
So next we have Deep Blue Sea 2. Seoul, did you see it?
No.
Oh, okay then. Alan, you saw it. I'm surprised.
Well, I found it online somewhere.
Yeah, no, I had to. I don't normally do that sort of thing, but I did go to the deep, dark depths of the internet to find it. As I didn't think that either of you would. I thought that one of us should probably represent it, and considering I'm the big shark fan.
Yeah, well, go on then. You tell us what you thought of it.
Hashtag Calvin's sharks are dead. He's never gonna request another shark film again. Yeah, it's dreadful. It's just absolutely appalling. Beyond even what I thought, just no sense of humour, no fun of the original, nothing even remotely surprising. I thought the original had a couple of good twists in there regarding who would live and die, but
does it tie into the first one at all, or is it kind of just
no?
All right.
It's pretty much just the exact same thing, except instead of, in the first film, Saffron Burrows' character is working on these sharks because her dad had Alzheimer's and she wants to find a cure for Alzheimer's. So that, fair enough, fair motivation. In this film, whoever's leading the research into these sharks is doing so to make humans more intelligent, because artificial intelligence is becoming very smart, and how can humans possibly survive alongside that kind of artificial intelligence unless they're smarter than it? And that's the whole reason why they're genetically engineering these sharks to have bigger brains and whatnot, which doesn't seem like as good a reasoning.
Yeah, it was... it was really just kind of a quintessential bad film. Everything that makes these cheap, kind of crappy films cheap and crappy. The TV actors really what I mean by proper TV actors, not like when you do good TV these days. I mean the sort of actors you see on
generous with that. I think not even a recurring character on a soap, someone who pops in an episode and has one line in the background, orders a drink in a bar, and that's it.
It's like Tremors 4 acting. and just bad dialogue, badly written, badly delivered. But very classic of that low budget film kind of feel. All the characters are just you may as well have tattooed bad guy on their forehead, or heroine, or spunky young, go-getter and computer nerd, all that sort of thing. I'll tell you what I immediately noticed, which is so unusual these days, a proper opening credits sequence.
Yeah, I thought that was almost James Bond-esque.
Yeah, it was.
It's really bizarre.
Is it a cheap way to pad out the running time?
You might be right there, actually. Yeah. But just so you don't see that anymore with proper, just 3 or 4 minutes of just names on the screen, and in the background something fairly inconsequential. It's just one of the characters, swimming with sharks or something. But it doesn't set up any plot or anything. It's just showing this character. So yeah, that was interesting to see that. It's been a while. But then just obviously like at one point there's a camera on this woman in a room and she takes her clothes off in her pants. That's it. There's no relevance to that. She's just a quick shot of this woman in her pants.
At least Saffron Burrows took off her wetsuit so she could ground herself for when she threw the electric wire.
At least they found an excuse for it. Also, it's quite a slow start. It spends about 40 minutes before anything really dramatic happens. And they don't even use that time setting up the characters or anything. I don't know what was happening in that time because nothing happened at all. Well, one thing that is kind of an interesting take on it, you might appreciate this, Saul, is that the sharks are super intelligent, but then they're not the immediate problem because, of course, they're in this, like, it's kind of like the first one where they're in this building that's in the water, and so they're running around these little things. But obviously these little corridors and stuff, they're not that big, so having sharks swim around them, it's going to be, how far can they get? They've come up with the answer to that. One of the sharks is pregnant and gives birth to a load of killer baby sharks. For some reason, like 30 of them. I don't know how many baby sharks have, but I'm pretty sure it's not that many.
I think there's 5, but it's impossible to know and count.
Then all the people are getting killed by little baby sharks. So it's more like piranha, and they're just running around like they suddenly like. So you don't have a big fin in the sea and you're like dum. It's just like. And then they're like, "Oh my god, I'm being eaten!" But I thought that was at least something a bit different and gave it a different flavour. But that should have been like a one-off thing where one person gets killed like that rather than the whole concept. And but that was the one thing that made me go, "Oh, that's different."
The kills aren't terribly interesting or fun. There's like a few because they have these little sharks that Alan was just saying. There's like the odd death. There's that one where it's that woman who has like half her face bitten off, and she's I guess you couldn't do that with a properly sized shark. There are a couple of deaths which pay homage, I suppose, to the first film. There's one that's kind of unexpected, and then one that like the shark like sends someone out of the water vertically, flying towards camera. But the effects are quite terrible, or the CG is, rather. They have, like, a proper shark model, I guess, which didn't look that bad, but there's actually very minimal CG in the film. It's a lot of just, we're seeing the shark POV, like, Jaws style, but I guess that's just more to, so they don't have to spend the money on these special effects shots, rather than anything else, artistic license.
Yeah.
Because even in the first film, they showed the sharks quite a lot. They were quite proud to show off their CG sharks, but here the CG is barely improved at all. I'm pretty sure towards the start they even like reuse the exact same shots of the sharks, like biting towards the camera. Yeah, just dreadful, really, really bad.
I mean, I watched this film, I don't know, 4 or 5 days ago, and I couldn't tell you which character survived at the end. I mean, I could make an educated guess based on which ones were the heroes, but I actually couldn't say for sure.
Well, let's not spoil the magic for the listeners if they wish to discover this film when it eventually comes out here in some capacity, if it ever will.
Well, I gave that one a rating of 4. Which feels quite generous now, looking back on it, but that's what I gave it, so what the hell.
Wow. I mean, I gave it a 2, so that's, yeah. It was very close to God's Not Dead as being one of the very worst films I think I've ever seen.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
No more shark films. That's it. There's no point in doing any more. That's ended it. That killed any joy I get out of them. Sorry, guys.
So it's a big one next.
Is this the final one?
It's the final proper one we're going to talk about.
Just as we record, Deadpool 2 came out yesterday. I certainly haven't seen it. I don't know if Saul managed to.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
And actually, and in fact, Solo will have come out by the time this episode drops, but obviously it's not out now, so
Yeah.
we can't talk about it yet.
Should we briefly discuss? Because Deadpool 2, most things I've read, and I haven't been reading in massive detail, suggests that it is actually a far more self-assured, intelligent, subversive film than the first, and that they kind of have built upon. They have felt that they can kind of go off the rails and be a bit more crazy. And I've read a lot of things from people who say they hated the first film, who loved the second. So I actually am quite looking forward to seeing it now. Yeah, I don't know. And as for Solo, early reviews suggest it isn't a complete and utter train wreck. Although they also suggest it's very inconsequential and nothingy. But I don't know. Sounds like it might be fun. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being my favourite Star Wars film ever made, to be honest. So.
Yeah, so the bad guy in Deadpool 2 is played by Josh Brolin.
Yeah.
And so can you see where I'm going with this very seamless segue?
Yeah.
That was really good.
At this point, I think if you haven't seen Avengers Infinity War, like, you've already had it spoiled for you by something on the internet. So, like, turn off now if you haven't seen it and you've somehow avoided spoilers, because this is the last film we're talking about now. So I assume we've all seen this one, all three of us.
Yep.
I went to the cinema to see this on a Sunday morning at 11 a.m. 2 weeks after it was released. Sol, you're mental, and you went midnight showing on the opening night because apparently you like being sat in a room full of twats. It just makes you feel at home. So would you like to share that experience with us?
If I hadn't done that, parts of the film would have been spoiled for me. I came home and there were spoilers on the internet. As I was leaving the cinema, some guy was on his phone and his mate said, "What are you doing?" And he went, "I'm spoiling it on Facebook."
Lol.
Yeah. So, you know. But I'll tell you what.
People are horrible.
Yeah,
People are
I know.
Dreadful. It's really annoying. I hate that.
But I tell you what.
You know, there's murderers and rapists as well. But mostly spoilers of films.
Yeah, but, you know, they can be crimes of passion, can't they? Whereas this is just cold-hearted, calculated, antisocial behaviour. I tell you what, right, I've never gone to a midnight showing before. It was actually a really good experience. The cinema was busier than I've ever seen it, which astounded me. The car park was nearly full, and it's a big car park. But there was like a real buzz in the air, and it just felt like the American experience of watching something at the cinema. People were like,
and you're saying this is a good thing?
It was like
I wouldn't have made it out. I would have burned down the building. That's why.
Look, so I was sat waiting for it to start, and you know, you had knobheads coming in like Marvel baseball caps and stuff, and that was like, what are you doing?
Was there anyone actually in costume?
But not quite. No.
All right. I'll let that one go.
But the close, like, what it meant was that every joke landed. There were people laughing with every joke. Like every moment just kind of played properly. That even moments that weren't, you know, that moment when Vision and Scarlet Witch are fighting, and then this train goes past, and then there's a silhouetted character, and you go, oh well, it's probably Captain America. It's early on, whatever. And then Captain America walks in, and you're meant to be like, oh my god, it's Captain America.
He's got a beard.
People in the cinema were like, oh, woo! And clapping and cheering, and it was good fun, man.
No, I wouldn't have made it.
I enjoyed it. And then I went back to watch it again because I wanted to take the film in properly as a film rather than as a kind of soap opera, which was what the first viewing really was. And that was a Sunday evening, and it was like the most British, subdued. No one laughed at any jokes. No one reacted to anything.
That's how films should be seen.
So yeah, I mean, I've had both experiences.
Well, it's good. I mean, what little respect I had for you is now gone. But what did you think of the film?
I loved it, man.
Bearing in mind that the respect has gone. So
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was basically everything I could have hoped for from this film.
Well, before we go into details, Calvin, let's get your opinion, as I sense it may be different.
Well, I think we all had very different first experiences seeing it. I saw it at working in the industry, you do get the luxury of the occasional industry screening, and I saw it at one of those. Yes, very fancy. So because it was full of people who are in that business already, there was, some crowd interaction and open laughter and gasps and that sort of thing. So I did have some lesser form of audience participation. This one's real tough for me because, similar to Black Panther, how I had one specific emotion when I immediately came out of the film compared to what I was telling people about. This is one where I came out of it thinking, there are some bits in there that are some of the most kinetic and well-paced action sequences I think I've ever seen. There were some really funny bits. Characterization was all very good, and yet equally there were bits that were so mind-numbingly stupid and bad, and I hated the ending more than I can express with words.
Can we put a pin in the ending? Could get to that later.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to go into any more detail just yet.
Because
until we've heard Alan's thoughts.
I'll come round.
I am going to have to see it again. I certainly didn't experience it the first time as a soap opera like Seoul did, because I've said this in countless Avengers episodes that we've done before. I'm not terribly invested in these characters. I don't really care out of any of them, who lives, who dies. I don't really have any stakes in that. So yeah, seeing it as a very, very casual Marvel fan, I'd probably average out that rating, I guess. But yeah, what about you, Alan?
Well, I think I might be coming kind of in the middle here, where I'm not a big Avengers fan. I wasn't going into it with any great expectations, and I kind of liked it. I was all right with it. I think it was a well-made film in the sense that there's a hell of a lot going on, a lot of plates being spun, and I think for the most part it's really well handled. I think.
And on that note, can I just jump in and say one of the big criticisms I've seen of this film is that it's overblown, overstuffed, too much going on, and I really think, all things considered, it's actually quite a restrained film. There's so much that they could have done in it that they didn't have Hawkeye, they didn't have Ant-Man. There's so many elements in it where they kind of held back and were like, no, we're going to kind of streamline this scene, make this as simple as possible. And I think it's actually quite admirable how they managed to pull that off.
And I think that is because they picked the plot and they stuck to it. And that plot is Thanos and the Infinity Stones. That's the plot of this film. And there is other things that go on which are obviously being set up for something later on. I could have done without that, to be honest. There's definitely some characters that didn't need to be there, a couple of scenes that could easily be cut out, but I assume it's going to pay off later on.
I think the most overt hangover that stops it being self-contained is Bruce Banner and his whole arc with well, I say arc,
obviously
it's
just
half an arc.
It's just a taste of what's to come.
Wait a minute, no, it's not self-contained at all.
Well,
it's the amount of
it is
things. No. There are arcs that are completed here, like Loki and Thor. Their arc is kind of done pretty much at the start of this. If you don't have any prior knowledge, if you haven't seen any of those films, that moment is inconsequential. And
that's
really
not even
matter.
an arc. That's just a nubbin on the end of what was an arc completed in Thor Ragnarok. No, the thing is, why I think this works for me, because I generally speaking cannot stand when a film does just end and tell you to come back next time, which this film absolutely does, don't get me wrong. But the reason why I think it gets away with it here, for me, is basically that if there's a protagonist of this film, it is Thanos. And he has a complete arc. He has a hero's journey within this film. It's his story, and I think the film works on that level.
I agree with that, and I think that's basically why this works. Yeah, I'm just going to repeat what you said. I think Thanos' journey is what we're following here, and the Avengers are the set decoration, so to speak. I mean, are we going to have to talk about the ending? But what I feel, if that was the ending of this film,
can we save the ending till the end? I'll very quickly touch on just a few more broad strokes, just to kind of get them off my chest.
Okay,
But I think almost every individual scene taken as a standalone moment in this film is just done so well. I think you mentioned, Calvin, the characterization being top notch, and I really agree with that. I never quite clicked with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but they were my favourite characters possibly in this one. I really enjoyed
Completely.
I agree with that as well.
And particularly Thor and Rocket Raccoon's rapport working off. If the ending does stick and Guardians 3 is just Thor and Rocket and like maybe Howard the Duck, I'll be so happy. That's obviously not going to be the case, but
I agree with that. I liked Guardians of the Galaxy gang with Thor, like when Thor and what's his face, Chris Pratt, kind of facing off, and that the way that's handled is done really nicely. It's funny because it has the Guardians of Galaxy humor, which has now become Thor humor as well in the last film. So that was a perfect pairing. Whenever they were on, that was my favorite bits. Yeah, but then there was other bits with like Scarlett Johansson and Mark Ruffalo as Hulk that was just like no point in this, not adding anything. Like Scarlett Johansson may as well not have been in it.
I liked the teaming up of Iron Man and Doctor Strange as well.
Oh, yes, they were wonderful.
I think the writers have talked about the Frasier inspiration behind that.
Yes.
They're pretty much the same character, but one is just a bit more experienced. Yeah. So I thought they had great... Benedict Wong, he was great and disappointed when he left so early, but I guess, he has to make time for the bigger stars.
He has to protect the inner sanctum.
Well,
job.
True.
But again, that's another great. I forgot about Doctor Strange, but that's another great example because his film was one of the weaker Marvel films, I'd say, leading up to this, and he was on point here. I thought he was fantastic. I loved him.
Well, like I say, they're all well handled. That's what I liked about this.
Yeah,
I could do without Doctor Strange, to be honest. I'm all right.
Oh, he was one of my favourite parts of this film. I thought he was.
They used him well.
Yeah. I think is very important, to be honest, with the ending and setting up a lot of the shit that goes down in the third act and the way that it plays out.
I bet it's important to the next film when they reverse it all.
And the other thing is that, again, just going to how kind of well thought through it all was, that the opening scene is... if for fans of the franchise, it's utterly nihilistically brutal.
It's what we call the Alien 3 gambit.
Just but I think it was I think it's a very consciously like, we're gonna completely gut punch you. You enjoyed that film, well, fuck you. And it's such a look, we're not fucking around kind of opening to the film. And I've never quite had an experience like that, watching a film of this scale, of this magnitude, where I'm so tense because at any given moment that someone holds a knife to someone's throat, you kind of think, oh, they could actually die here.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever felt any real sense of like, oh, anybody could die. Maybe I just don't care.
Yeah, me neither. I was actually quite disappointed with, like, I think there were only 3 genuine deaths in there.
Okay, I want to make a bit of a broader point before we get to the ending. So, what I did like about this was that, Thanos, who is, the villain, we go to great pains to see what he's doing and why he's doing it and kind of create an empathetic character. Because ultimately what he's doing is, basically saying there's too many people in the universe. We need to cut that down so that the whole entity has a chance to survive.
Yeah.
And there's a certain logic to that, albeit a brutal one. It's something that plays into our own problems here, where the population is getting out of control, and it's something we saw in Kingsman, for example. It's becoming it was in that last Da Vinci Code film. It's something that's becoming more and more prevalent, this concern over population. But I just love that they created this character and made it understandable, because what this film is, a filmmaker's going, look, we've created a world that is too big, there's too many characters here, and in order for it to go on, we need to cut out some of the dead wood. And that's what they do. And I really like that, this kind of meta sense that the population of the Marvel Universe is now too high and it's becoming unmanageable, so we're going to fucking gut it. And basically walking out this film, it would be a lot better if I had any faith whatsoever that any of this was going to stand. And I know that some of these characters are going to stay dead. But I also know that in the next film, they're going to pick and choose which ones they want to bring back, find a way to bring them back. And it's so there's no resonance behind it. There's no depth behind it.
I don't think it's going to be a case of picking and choosing. I think everyone who died, like, properly is dead. And I think everyone, at the end of the film, if you haven't seen it, this is the big spoiler, Thanos snaps his hands, he erases half of all life from the galaxy with the Infinity Gauntlet, the gems, and they all kind of fade away. There's various scenes where just a load of characters fade into dust. And I think what we're going to find out is that those people who, faded away, weren't killed, or their deaths don't count as dying, or it's going to be some kind of massive displacement. It's going to be reversed
in some way, yeah.
Yeah, and they're all coming back. I can almost guarantee it. They are all coming back.
But that's the problem with it, because it completely weakens the ending, because you know exactly. that. And it also really weakens the ending because Thanos kind of completes his story arc, and he gets this sort of bittersweet triumph, but, he doesn't take any pleasure in it. But I know that's going to be reversed as well. So any emotional connection I had to that character is pointless as well.
I really was furious with the people around me. I did hate people like you do, Alan, when I watched it at the midnight screening, and I could hear them all falling for it. The first one to go, I think, is Bucky Barnes, and some people gasped, and it was like, all right, yeah, fair enough.
That might stand.
I was going to say, fair enough. I can totally get why they think he's dead. But then, the Guardians start going, and, by the time it's like Star-Lord, you're like, right. And then Groot's going, and there were people in the cinema going, literally, I heard people going, no! Because Groot was doing his final I am Groot. And and it's like, well, of course he's coming back, for fuck's sake. And then Spider-Man does his I don't feel so good, and dies. And it's like, right, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Fucking...
I had the exact same thing with there were people genuinely being like, "Oh my god, maybe they announced the Spider-Man film as a red herring, and there is going to be no Black Panther 2 and all that kind of stuff." Oh my god, how are they possibly going to come back from this? It's like, well, it's obvious. They're just going to go back in friggin' time. It's like even Doctor Strange prophesies.
Yeah, that's the thing. Doctor Strange basically spells it all out for them, like what's going to happen.
Yeah,
and that's why it won't bother me too much. I just wish there was less of a circus about the ending, because this is the other thing.
Yeah.
I read so much going into this film about reviews mentioning the ending, how it was a gut punch, how no one saw it coming, how it was such a complete and utter surprise, and even since I've read so many things that are just going on about how they didn't see it coming and no one could have seen that coming. And no, anyone who's read the fucking Infinity Gauntlet comic that this is based on, that was exactly what I thought the end of the film was. I think I mention on our Avengers episode, I think I say it's going to end with Thanos getting the gems, and then the next film is going to be them dealing with it.
That's why I wanted to kind of believe it. In the real world, we're at a position where some of these guys are moving on, some of them are getting too old, or whatever. We've got scope to remove characters, and you can do it with dignity. You can have them die. You can have them retire. You can replace them. We go, oh, look, it's a new Iron Man. It's played by someone else, but he's got the same suit. You can do that. So there should be real jeopardy in these films, because I should be walking in there going, do you know what? Robert Downey Jr., he's done enough of these films now. He's going to walk away. He doesn't need any more money.
But, I mean, did you not feel... This is it. I felt like there was real jeopardy up until the end. And, I mean, did you not buy that Tony Stark fake out when he got stabbed in the film?
No, unless it's a headshot or something more final. That I knew he's going to come back from that. He'll be fine.
Yeah. I think the next film we are going to get some pretty heavy casualties that are going to be significant characters. Everyone keeps saying Tony Stark, Captain America. I think Tony Stark will survive. I think the more I've thought about it, the more his arc really needs to be that he kind of survives and puts it behind him and manages to just kind of live a normal life. And
why don't they make Spider-Man his young ward, and then Spider-Man becomes the new Iron Man? They
basically have.
Up. Yeah, they did, didn't they? Okay, well there you go. Boom, done. Iron Man can retire. But
that's it. I think Iron Man's arc will be basically he
becomes the new Nick Fury. That's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it might be, yeah.
Except it won't be Robert Downey Jr. because he'll be far too expensive. Apparently he got paid $200 million alone for these 2 Avengers films.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have been good if, during that time when everyone's floating away, if we just cut to a quick shot of Jeremy Renner, just with his family, just to see him dissolve into ash, just as a kind of like, don't worry, guys, we've dealt with it.
That would have been really good, because the most annoying thing about that ending is that you just know in the next film there's going to be a dramatic reveal where a train goes past and then there's like a silhouetted character and this guy steps out from the shadows and it's Hawkeye and this and then
another train comes from the other way and just smashes it.
But
even your enthusiastic midnight audience wouldn't whoop that reveal, I don't think.
I just know that there's going to be a scene where we're expected to care for Hawkeye showing up, and we won't, and it's going to annoy me. So, out of 10?
This is really tough. Because the ending did just leave me with such a sour taste in my mouth. I think it's going to be 6 out of 10 for me, but then that could... If it works very nicely with the next film, that could go up, I guess.
Well, funnily enough, I'll give it a 7, and I suspect, based on if I watch the next film, I'll probably come back to this and drop it because I'm expecting to be disappointed by what they do in the next film.
Yeah, my rating's also like very likely to fluctuate depending on how the next film plays things out. But as it stands, I'm giving it a 10.
Oh dear. Okay.
I never wanted it to end, man. I honestly, I was so happy. I enjoyed every second, apart from the ending.
That's nonsense. But
yeah.
I do want to mention one more thing, actually. What I think was probably the worst character / performance in the whole thing was
Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage, yeah. What was that about? It just didn't work at all. What was the voice? Was it the voice he was doing?
I'm Now, does he do that? I've never watched Game of Thrones. Is that the British accent he does in Game of Thrones? Hello, I'm Peter Dinklage and I'm English. I know Thor.
Not with that deep affectation. I mean, the accent is similar, but not that.
It was like, because he was trying to do a like fee fi fo fum giant voice. I guess the character isn't given enough space to really be developed, but that feels like a bad actor. And I've seen the guy act well, so I know it's not. So I don't know what the problem there is. Did he just was it a last minute replacement and they just sort of like threw him on set, or what?
I think it's just a joke, because it's like everyone knows he's small, but look, he's massive. But
but then he is still an actor, though. It's not like he can't. I
thought he was fine. I thought he was more like 2-dimensional and cartoony than most of the performances. Anyway, is that our Avengers discussion done?
Yes, which is about as long as the discussion on all the other films.
I know, but this is what everyone wants to hear. They love the Avengers.
Cool. Right. Bye.
Bye.
Right.
Are we stopping then?
Wait. I'm going to click my fingers. Oh, you're both gone. Oh, well, it'll just be me next week then, listeners.
Bye. I've got half my body's gone, but half of
no, this didn't work as I planned.
Half of me's still here.
Hey guys, I'm back. I was dead, but I've just turned back time and I'm here. So I was dead for a bit.
That was a scary few minutes, but it's all worked out all right.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Diminishing Returns, and this is another plug for our website, dimreturns.com, and another request to, if you care to do so, leave a positive iTunes rating and or review if you haven't done so already. It would really help us out by helping more listeners like yourself find the show and hopefully enjoy it and get something out of it. Please do join us again next week as we look towards what is undoubtedly going to be one of the biggest movies of the year, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom.